Hi, my name is Sarah Denny. I am a pediatrician in Columbus, Ohio, and I am involved in the Ohio chapter of the AAP, predominantly with their injury prevention programs as well as advocacy. And today we are talking about our Store It Safe program, Reversing the Trend of Irreversible Actions. This is the teen module. We also have available an intro to Store It Safe as well as one for young children. So make sure you check out those as well. Okay, let's get started here. I have no conflicts of interest. And today we're going to talk about the data around firearm injuries in teens and talk about what providers can do to keep teens safe from unintentional and intentional firearm injuries, and then talk about the teen-specific Store It Safe resources that the Ohio chapter of the AAP has developed with input from our partners, including adolescent medicine specialists, suicide prevention specialists, as well as our firearm specialists as well. So what does the data show us? We know that of youth who have completed suicide by firearm, 82% use a firearm from their home. We know that household gun access triples the risk of death by suicide. Now, this is a chart that shows fatal firearm injury rates by intent for youth ages 0 to 17 in the United States from the years 2000 to 2014. And you can see the suicide rate dropping down here around 2007, and then a steady incline. And I think, the data, this doesn't show data beyond 2014, but I know that in general, suicide trends have continued to increase. So I suspect that the youth data would continue to increase in this picture. And then homicide rates in purple declining at this to this point. So kind of gives you an idea of how significant the suicide rates are and why we're having this discussion. One of the big issues with teen suicide rate and teen suicide is the impulsivity of it. People have done research using interviews from survivors of near lethal suicide attempts. And we know that 25% of those interviewed made their attempt within 5 minutes of their decision to take their own lives. 50% of those surveyed made their suicide attempt within 20 minutes of their decision, and 71% made their attempt within the first hour of the crisis in which they decided to kill themselves. So what our goal is if a teen has a crisis and makes a decision to kill themselves, we want to have a barrier in place to give them that time. If we know that as time elapses, the feeling of suicide dissipates, and we can prevent attempts if we can create that barrier. So that is the goal of Store It Safe with regards to access to lethal means. So the really important thing that we want people to know about is that this is not just for families where someone has had a history of mental health issues. We know that youth can be impulsive. Their frontal lobe, their executive function, their decision-making center isn't fully developed. And so we want to make sure that everyone is thinking about this as it relates to your families and your patients. And so not only are we talking about firearms in this discussion, we're talking about all lethal means. So Tylenol, for example, that's found in many medicine cabinets, but we know that that is a lethal means of suicide. And so reducing those access to lethal means, whether it's a gun, whether it's over-the-counter medication, whether it's other medication in the home, we need to be thinking about those, treating them as lethal means, and locking them up and keeping them away from our teens. So a question just to make sure everyone is still with us and paying attention. Youth who commit suicide by gun most commonly obtain the gun from where? From home, from a gun shop, from a friend, from school, or from a shooting expo? I'll give you a second. All right, if you said at home, you are correct. Okay, and what percentage of survivors of near lethal suicide attempts say that their attempt occurred within 1 hour of their decision to kill themselves? Is it 5%, 10%, 50%, 70%, or 95%? So that was from the study where they interviewed survivors of near lethal suicide attempts, and 70% said that their attempt occurred within 1 hour of their decision. So the Partnership of Safety of Children Around Firearms, as I mentioned, is a group of people who care a lot about injury and deaths related to firearms, and have really come together to create this content and messaging that people across all of these different organizations, so we have concealed carry instructors and gun retailers and Buckeye Firearms and law enforcement, and all of these different partners who are all saying the same message: we need to keep guns locked up. So we talked about phase one in the module for young children, and that was really the focus of wave one or phase one. Phase two was to develop materials more geared towards our adolescent patients, as well as our families of adolescents. And so we had a meeting, and we also invited our suicide prevention partners, as well as adolescent medicine specialists. And our goal of that meeting was to, again, develop what was going to be our message for our teens and what materials do we need. And after discussing it, we decided it's the same message. We still need to store it safe. So we decided we're just going to stick with that message and develop some materials. And although with the young children, we developed materials for healthcare providers and parents, we felt like the teens needed their own more teen-specific materials. So we worked really hard with teens. We did several focus groups and developed some content that we think is meaningful to give our teenage patients as well. And then really develop, as part of phase two, our big social media and marketing around suicide prevention, injury prevention related to firearms in teens. Again, geared towards parents, geared toward teens, and geared toward healthcare providers. As I mentioned, these were the different messages. And so what can you do as a provider? Well, actually, there's a lot. So the first thing is, during your well child visits, we need to be screening for suicide or suicidality, screening for depression, screening for anxiety. So we want people using a validated screening tool ideally at every adolescent encounter, but at least at every well child visit. Providing advice to families that a barrier needs to be in place for all potentially lethal means. So again, not just that firearm, but also the medication and other ways that a teen could use to take their own life. And then family, the acronym is SAFE. So the F is for family. There should be family discussion between the parents and the teens. And in our house, we just use it as a check-in. Hey, just want to do a quick check-in, see how things are going. Every so often, just so keep that door open for that line of communication. They know that they can always come and talk with you. And one of the things that we know in teens is they may be experiencing a stress in their life that to us, it doesn't seem that significant, but it could be very significant to them. So those check-ins are really helpful, just to see, how are things going at school, anything bothering you, and just continuing to keep those dialogues, keep that dialogue going. And then obviously emergency referrals when there is a life-threatening concern that comes up during the visit or comes up on that screen. So again, this is a very busy slide. I don't want you to read it or feel like you need to read it, but on the provider resource that we developed is this example of a flow chart using the SAFE acronym. So again, using a screening tool such as the PHQ-9, and then how you follow it through our algorithm based on if they screen negative. Even if they screen negative, again, teens are impulsive, so we still need to be having those discussions about barriers to lethal means as a means of reducing suicide and unintentional injury, having those family discussions. So whether positive or negative, this discussion should happen. And then if they do screen positive, we need to assess lethality to determine, is this an emergency referral, or can resources be provided? And again, if there's moderate use, some of you have integrated psychology or very good psychology access. This is going to vary a little bit depending on what system you're in. This is just a little key here to the PHQ-9 scoring system, if you're not familiar with that. But PHQ-9 is a validated screening tool. There are others out there too. This is one I'm more familiar with, but want to make sure that we're using a validated screening tool at those visits. For parents of teens, This is a one-page front and back handout. Sometimes families think, oh, my child is on the honor roll, or my child is captain of their football team. They would never kill themselves, or they don't have mental health issues. We want everyone to know it doesn't matter. Everyone needs to be having these discussions because, sometimes they may be thinking about it and you would never anticipate it unless you bring it up and ask them. This goes through a little bit about risks regarding medication, alcohol, as well as firearms, and then barriers as a solution. Educates families on what some of the warning signs are. What should you be looking at if you're noticing a change in your teen? Keep these in mind. And then if you do notice those things, here are some resources available to you. So really this handout hits all the key highlights. Emotional triggers should not be lethal is kind of our tagline for teens, because again, they do have a lot of emotions and they have a lot going on in their lives that again may seem trivial to us, but could be very, very significant. And then this is the card that we made with the help of several teens. Again, knowing that they're not alone, that people care about them, that people are there to support them and talk with them. We put these right at the top. A lot of the teens told us that they're much more likely to text someone as opposed to make a phone call. So that text number is right up there at the top. You can even say, hey, get your phone out. Let's go ahead and enter these into your contacts just so you have them in case you're in a situation where you're feeling really down, or if you have a friend who might be having a problem too. Sometimes I know with teens, it's easier to give them the message by talking about their friends. But knowing that it also applies to them. Some key messages that the teens helped us create. And then what to do. It's a lot of responsibility on a teen if they think that a friend of theirs may want to take their own lives. And I've been so impressed over the years at the number of teens who read something or saw something that made them nervous and they told an adult and action was taken to help keep that person safe. So they will do that, but we just need to empower them to, if you see something, say something and reach out to a trusted adult if you're worried about someone, including themselves. Again, educating educating teens on the warning signs. And then, recognizing that life is stressful. There's a lot going on. And so what are some things, these ways to take a break are 10 ways, but maybe you and the teen brainstorm, what are 10 ways you would like to take a break? What are 10 things you like to do? Because I'm sure it varies from one child to the next, or I'm sorry, one teen to the next. So these resources, again, are all available on our website and in our toolkit. So we welcome you to use these, any or all of them. So this is just sort of a checklist of where we are, what we've been doing. We focus grouped those materials because we want to make sure that what we're giving the teens actually matters to the teens. So we completed that, expanded our partnership to include our adolescent specialists and suicide prevention specialists. We did a lot of fundraising through the Ohio AAP Foundation. We're so grateful to all those who contributed. Those efforts will continue so that we can provide gun boxes to providers moving forward. And then we're launching our social media campaign. And so if you would like to get involved in that, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we would love for you to share our message, the message of our partnership, the message of the chapter, and all of our partners will be participating in that as well. So what can you do? In addition to the screening that we talked about, go to this website, take the pledge, say, yes, you know what, I'm willing to be a part of this movement and reverse the trend of irreversible actions. I want to prevent the intentional and unintentional injuries in kids related to firearms. And your involvement can vary. It can be, I want to be on the mailing list. It can be, I want to send some social media. I want to use your materials. Whatever it may be, you'll go on our mailing list when you take the pledge, and shortly there will be applications coming out if you want to apply for some gun boxes to distribute in your practice, then those will be available. So I definitely encourage you, as you finish up this module, to go to our website and take the pledge. This is a billboard from Akron Children's. We appreciate them spreading the message about preventing suicide among Ohio adolescents. And you can see their restriction to all lethal or many lethal means, the firearm, the medications, as well as alcohol. So I very much appreciate your time and your interest in this topic. We're really excited about all the momentum that we've been getting and all of the people who want to get involved in this movement. So thank you so much. If you have questions, you can reach out to me or to the chapter. And we appreciate your help and your participation moving forward.